Hello class, I am going to be going over the baking process in Substance Painter. I know I sent along that link to the video on YouTube, which is a tutorial. It's about 20 minutes long, and I really would like all of you to watch that because I think it's some great information just about normals in general, as well as how to bake in Substance. But for the sake of this assignment, and given that I was and have been sick and not able to go to class, I'm going to make a quick tutorial here for you as well, just so that you can follow along. Okay, so here's that hydrant that I keep showing in class. So I quickly, again, just want to go over what you need to do, what your scene should look like before you start baking, right? So I have 2 layers. You guys will all have 4 layers, but essentially you're going to have your low poly and high poly, your low poly crate in one layer, your low poly barrel in one layer, and then the high poly crate in one layer, and high poly barrel in one layer as well. All right, so here I just have these 2 objects. So I only have 2 layers. You will have 4. So if I turn them on and off, you can see there's the high poly hydrant, and here's the low poly, right? So, excuse me. First, they need to be directly on top of each other, right? And the center of the grid is good. So put them right on top of each other, like so. So I'm going to zoom in here. But your high poly should kind of peek through in areas, but they should be lined up very closely, right? So as close as you can possibly get them. Okay, so something like that. Double check, make sure that your low poly is under 5,000 triangles, right? And your high poly is fine. Make sure your history is deleted. So edit, delete all by type, history. Make sure that your outline is cleaned up and everything is named correctly. Let me delete this light. Yeah, so everything's named correctly, outliner's cleaned up, and then your UVs. Remember that, let me get this on the screen correctly. Remember, your UVs are the foundation for your texture work, so they need to be solidly, using as much space as possible, organized, and unwrapped in a way that has minimal distortion, and minimal seams, and minimal shells, right? So everything should be nice and clean. And again, if I were to turn on this checkerboard and look at, grab everything, right? I should be able to scroll around. All these squares should be roughly the same size and with minimal distortion, right? So that's pretty good. Something else when it comes to the UVs, let me see if I can get that back. So if I turn on shaded mode like this, if I just, this button right here in the UV editor, if I left click on it, everything will turn out blue, and if I right click, all your shells will be colored or painted differently. But the left click is useful, so if you left click and any of these are red or magenta, it means your shell is flipped, okay? So, and you need to fix that. So to fix that, if you select it, and you select, let's say this one's flipped. I'm gonna select the shell, go to UV, and where is it? I think they moved it. I'm looking for flip or reverse. Let's see, modify. Yeah, modify flip. Right, so if you have a shell that looks like this, it's red, then it's inside out and it won't texture correctly. So again, we go to UV shell, modify flip to switch that around. Okay. All right, so my UVs are done. The scene is clean. Everything's looking good. Next thing I need to do is I need to export both the high poly and low poly. So select, or actually before you do that, you need to set up the naming convention. And we've talked about this before, but essentially, let me pull this to the side here. Right, so each piece needs to be named in the same fashion. So like this base piece here is named base underscore low, base underscore high. So each piece, like all these bolts and stuff, are named the exact same way, but on the high poly, I have this underscore high, and on the low poly, I have the underscore low. So syntax and everything needs to be the exact same. And then I have them all parented in here in a way that makes sense. And we talked about that before. And again, to parent, you can do it a couple different ways, but let's say we have two objects here. Whoops. Like the torus and the cube. Yeah, so I can either, the shortcut, if you want to do a shortcut, you can select the child first that you want to be parented, then the parent. So let's say that I want this cone to be the parent, then hit P on the keyboard, and now you can see it set that up. Or I typically just grab whatever I want the child to be. So this, let's say I want the torus to be the child of the cone again. In the outliner, middle mouse click and drag onto the cone, whatever you want to be the parent, and then you can name everything in here too. Alright, so that's how I did this whole setup up here, where everything, all the pieces are parented and named the same except for their suffix, right? And that's important so we can do the bake by name feature. Alright, so everything's named. That's the thing I forgot to say. I'm going to delete this. Alright. Excuse me, I'm still sick. Okay, so I export this. Again, that's select the mesh file, export selection, go to your data folder of your project, and then yeah, save it in there. Oh, this is the wrong thing. Oh, no, it's not. So you're going to export as an FBX both the low poly and high poly of both the crate and the barrel. All right. Before you export your low poly mesh, it's a good idea to select the entire thing and go to mesh display, soften edge. Whoops. Let me just isolate that. Right, and it's going to make it look something like this, where everything's soft and gummy looking. That's just going to help in the baking process with the hard and soft edges and the normals being completely derived from the high poly. So we want to do that. Alright, so we've exported it, everything's clean. In Painter, Substance Painter, right? Go File, New, document resolution is going to be 2048. I'm going to select my low poly mesh, high or low. That's good. Hit OK. Excuse me. There's my low poly mesh, the UVs and everything, the material. And I need to bake, right? And this is what you guys all need to do. So, texture set settings right here. I'm going to scroll down. Additional maps. Bake textures. This is what we want. Click there. We do not have an ID map. I'll show you guys how to do that later, but we don't need one for this. And also that tutorial, the other tutorial talks about ID maps a little bit. But everything else we can keep. We're going to change this output size to 2048. And we're going to say, click on this high poly parameters. Oh no, sorry. Underneath high poly, we're going to high definition meshes, this little button right here. This is how we're going to add our high definition, our high poly mesh. So hydrant high, open. I'm going to leave max frontal distance and max rear distance by default, but you know, if you're not getting appropriate depth on your bakes, you should consider changing these, like increasing or decreasing these numbers just by a little bit. I'll leave all this as default. Match, if you did the naming convention, which you should, change this from always to by mesh name. Anti-aliasing, let's do subsampling 4x4. And that's good. And then hit bake textures. And just gonna have to wait through this. Alright, and then we get something like this. I'm gonna zoom in and check out the bake. It's looking pretty good. If I turn on my wireframe, you can see, again, this is low poly, but I've baked on all the high poly details. So it looks pretty solid. So for next class, after spring break, this is essentially what is due, okay? So your low poly and high polys need to be done as they were supposed to be this last milestone. UVs should be unwrapped and clean, and your normal maps should be baked, right? Here's a normal map right here. Alright, so to get the normal map out, if we want to test it elsewhere, which is a good idea, we're going to go to File, Export Textures, Export. You're going to export it as a Targa. I'm going to export it into my source images folder. Where is that? First I must find where I put that. Here we go, hydrant, source images. Yeah, I'll just put it in here for now. Select folder, source images. Configuration, I changed this, so if we go to PBR metal rough, you'll need to get rid of the rest of these, but I might just, yeah, so there it is, normal, that's what we want. So I'm going to select this PBR metal rough. That's good, and then I'll just hit, let's see, make sure, yeah, I'll hit export. I'm going to open the folder. Here's the folder. So here's all this stuff. Really, there's no, I haven't done any texturing, so I can get rid of all these other maps. So I can get rid of that one, that one, that one. I just want to keep this normal map. Right, so there it is. Back in Maya, if I want to test that out, I can assign a new material to it. Choose Stingray PBS. Select that. Check this use normal map. Go to normal map down here. Click here. You guys should all know how to do this. Where did I put it? Hydrant. I think I. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Hit open. Right. So I think I baked this. I softened the normals on this, but didn't export the softened version, which is why it's looking a little funky here. But if I hadn't softened the normals, it would look better. But you can see it's showing up pretty well. Cool. Alright, but what is due next week? Again, all your UVs need to be mapped out correctly and your normals should be baked. So if you want to post a screenshot from Substance or from Maya with your normals baked, something like this, you could also change the channel by hitting C and toggle it over to height normal plus height plus base normal, and that way I can easily see the normal map in here and take a screenshot of that, and then put like this part and post it to the discussion. Alright? Okay, if you have any questions or anything, shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. Good luck, have a wonderful spring break. Don't save this baking part till the day before, because you can run into a lot of problems can happen that you need to resolve with this if you don't, especially if it's your first time doing it. So, all right, good.